You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So Glenn, Trump just said something at his rally that is not going to help him at trial. So let's watch this clip.
It's crazy stuff. I sat in the back, and you know what I did say? I said, I'd like to go down there because I see a lot of people walking down. They said, sir, it's better if you don't. I said, well, I'd like to. I'd better if you don't. All right, whatever you guys think is fine. That was
So there he is admitting that he did indeed try to go to the Capitol on January 6th to literally himself participate in the insurrection that he had incited. So what are the implications here for the January 6th case happening in D.C.?
I never thought I would say, Brian, I want Donald Trump to keep talking because he's providing prosecutors with more evidence. And what he's doing is he's taking away possible defenses and avenues of cross-examination for his defense attorneys. I mean, we heard the story about how on January 6th, Donald Trump got into the presidential limo, the beast, they call it, and he directed his security detail to do what? Drive him to the Capitol. How did we hear about it? Well, we first heard about it from Cassidy Hutchinson, that brave young lady who was, the right-hand person to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who decided to make a break from Team Trump because, remember, she had a lawyer appointed to her from Team Trump. That lawyer was, in substance, urging her not to tell the full truth about what she knew. She finally got a conflict-free lawyer and began to tell the truth to the grand jury, to the J6 committee, and ultimately to the American people. And she said, look, here's what I know. Tony Ornato, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, came to me and told me what went on in the Beast. He told me that Bobby Engel, I'm throwing a lot of names into the mix now, Bobby Engel, the head of Donald Trump's security detail, was in the Beast with the president and the driver after the J6 rally when Donald Trump had sicked his troops on the Capitol, telling them, go down there, fight like hell, and stop the certification. Then he said to Bobby Engel, take me to the Capitol, right? And so this was information that had been provided by Cassidy Hutchinson saying, listen, this is what Tony Ornato told me, Bobby Engel told him. That's actually double hearsay, Brian. We can talk more about that in a minute. And then, as the story got retold by Tony Ornato, Donald Trump was cussing up a storm, take me to the effing Capitol, I'm the effing president. And his security man said, no, it's not safe, we can't do that. Then Donald Trump grabbed the wheel, and Bobby Engel said, Mr. President, get your hand off the wheel. And the way the story goes, he then lunged for the driver, and Cassidy Hutchinson said Tony Ornato grabbed his clavicle when he was describing what had gone on in the Beast, what he had been told went on in the presidential limo, and some tussle ensued, but ultimately they did not take the president to the Capitol. So what happens? Well, it looks like maybe Tony Ornato and Bobby Engel weren't completely forthcoming with, among others, the J6 committee about what really happened in the Beast. So then what did we hear? We heard the MAGA chorus go up that Cassidy Hutchinson is a liar. She's a liar. None of this ever happened. Now remember, Cassidy Hutchinson simply told the J6 committee what Tony Ornato told her. It's not like she said, I was in the Beast, and then she made up the things that happened in the Beast. But setting that aside, they were calling for Cassidy Hutchinson's head because she was lying about Donald Trump wanting to go to the Capitol and participate in the insurrection, inferentially, on January 6th. And now Donald Trump, thank goodness, stands up in his rally and said, you know what I said? I said, take me to the Capitol. Thank you. That's exactly what Cassidy Hutchinson testified to. And Brian, when you play that clip, does anybody believe that Donald Trump really said, gentlemen, I'd like to go to the Capitol. Can you please take me to the Capitol? Yeah. Right. No, I believe Donald Trump said, take me to the effing Capitol. I'm the effing president, and then grabbed the wheel. But all of that is just window dressing on the most important evidence, which is Donald Trump told them, take me to the Capitol, because he wanted to command his troops from the battlefield, not from the White House. And they said, Mr. President, it's not safe. Why? Well, because a riot was raging at the Capitol at your insistence, so they took him back to the White House. But the point here is Donald Trump continues to shoot himself in the foot on the evidence front, and this is yet another incriminating statement that will be introduced at his trial in D.C.
Well, to that point then, is something like this actually usable in trial? Because Trump can just turn around and say, I was lying at that rally. I'm allowed to lie and say whatever I want when I'm not in a courtroom under oath.
It is absolutely usable at trial. Every word out of Donald Trump's mouth, every post from Donald Trump's stubby little fingers on his third-rate social media platform is admissible as evidence against him. It's called a statement of a party opponent. Anything Jack Smith, Fani Willis, Alvin Bragg, am I missing prosecutors? He has so many. Anything any of these prosecutors...
Letitia James is the last one.
Letitia James, the New York one. Any words that Donald Trump uttered or posted are admissible as evidence against him. Now, here's the thing. He can absolutely say, I was just lying at my rallies, but there are two problems with that. One, he is announcing to the jury under oath that he's a great big liar and nothing he says should be credited.
Right.
And two, if he wants to introduce evidence that he was lying at his rally, guess what? He has to take the stand and testify he was lying at his rally. No other witness can introduce his hearsay statement. Nobody can say to the jury in any of these courtrooms, Donald Trump told me he was lying at the rally. That's hearsay. So an important takeaway here, getting down into the legal weeds, Brian, is any words of the defendant or posts of the defendant that the prosecutors want to introduce as incriminating evidence, they come into evidence because that's an exception to the hearsay rule. Anything that Donald Trump said out of court that might help Donald Trump's cause in court cannot be admitted by Donald Trump. The only way it comes in is if Donald Trump takes the stand, and if he takes the stand, he will be destroyed, figuratively disemboweled during cross-examination.
So prosecutors really do have a vested interest in trying to introduce as much of Donald Trump's words as possible, almost as if to bait him into to testifying and to contradict what they're saying, because once he's on that stand, then all bets are off and they can cross-examine him as much as they want. He can't just up and leave whenever he wants to. Is that right?
Absolutely. And these tactical decisions were frankly so much fun for me to puzzle through in each and every trial. But here's the thing. I don't think there's enough bait to put on that line to reel Donald Trump up to the witness stand, because his lawyers, I think, will just quit the case in protest if they have to suffer through Donald Trump incriminating himself on the witness stand in front of the jury.
Glenn, at this point, do prosecutors in the D.C. trial even need any more evidence here to be able to secure a conviction against the guy?
No, the only thing they need is for the Supreme Court to do the right thing, deny the absolute immunity claim, and give the damn case back to Judge Chutkan so she can put it back on the trial track. One thing I did for 30 years as a federal prosecutor is I had to assess the quality, the quantity, the strength of evidence in criminal cases. What I can tell you, Brian, is the evidence in all of his criminal prosecutions, but as we're discussing, the evidence in his D.C. prosecution for trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election is overwhelming, and the prosecutors will be able to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt fairly easily with the evidence they have amassed.
And that's amid a whole raft of cases that are brought by the DOJ that are already hugely successful. Can you talk about the conviction rate for cases that the government actually does bring?
The conviction rate in the January 6 cases, mind you, they have been, prosecuting many of the boots of the insurrection, many of Donald Trump's foot soldiers who he ordered to go to the Capitol, fight like hell, and stop the certification, stop the steal on January 6th. And I think they have 100% conviction rate, not on every single count in every case, but I believe everybody who has gone to trial has been convicted on one or more of the counts in their indictment. So listen, DOJ ain't playing when it comes to bringing J6 cases. I just wish, Brian, they would work their way up the hierarchy, the command structure of the insurrection, the funders, the planners, the organizers, and the inciters. Don't forget, a guy like Rudy Giuliani told the crowd on January 6th as Donald Trump's fluffer, his warm-up act, he said, let's go down and have trial by combat. I mean, there is no mistaking that is a call to violence. And Rudy Giuliani, for that conduct, he is an unindicted co-conspirator in Donald Trump's D.C. prosecution, but he has not yet been indicted, not yet been charged. He needs to be charged. He needs to be tried. He needs to be prosecuted for those crimes.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's crazy that we're sitting here in May of 2024, and this happened in January of 2021, and we are waiting for someone like Rudy Giuliani, who stood up on that stage and said, let's have trial by combat, and the guy's still walking free. Granted, he's not having a great time. I think he's out more money than he could ever amass in the next 100 lifetimes, but still, that, he should be held accountable for what he did and the full extent to what he did. Glenn, what is the status of the D.C. trial as it relates to the Supreme Court right now?
We are treading justice water in D.C. because the Supreme Court has yet to decide whether Donald Trump is a king, is a monarch, is a dictator, and deserves absolute immunity and can commit all the crimes he wants against we the people without being prosecuted for it. We're waiting for that decision from the Supreme Court, and while the Supreme Court has that case, the trial court judge basically loses jurisdiction. She, Judge Tanya Chutkan, the presiding judge in D.C., can't do anything in that case, can't litigate motions, can't move in the direction of a trial date, because once an appellate court grabs hold of the case, the lower court judge, the trial court judge, is deprived of jurisdiction, can't do anything in the case. So we're stuck treading water, waiting for the Supreme Court to get off its duff and decide this issue. Hopefully they will reject Donald Trump's claim and return the case to Judge Chutkan. And then it looks like we're probably 60 to 90 days out from a trial once Judge Chutkan gets the case remanded or returned to her.
And I would just add on top of that, I know people are going to look at this case and say, look, the Supreme Court's got it in its hands, so it effectively doesn't matter at this point. That is all the more reason to focus on the November election, because if Donald Trump is able to win in November, then all bets are off as far as this D.C. prosecution is concerned. But if you want to see the guy held accountable for his crimes, and these were the greatest crimes against this country that we've seen in our lifetimes, if not the history of the United States, then the only way to make sure that he does that is to show up on in November and make sure that he doesn't win out and basically get himself a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, it's up to us. It's always up to us. No prosecutor, no judge, no government official was ever going to save us. We are the ones we've been waiting for, the American voters. So I keep saying we have to get out in numbers too big to rig and too real to steal, and then we can put Donald Trump in our rearview mirror, and all of the criminal cases against him can proceed to fruition, and fruition for him looks like a conviction and imprisonment.
Perfectly put. We'll leave it there. Of course, for those watching right now, if you want to follow along with the entirety of Donald Trump's prosecutions, including the one happening right now in Manhattan, Glenn and I are doing daily comprehensive coverage, so please, to keep on top of everything that's happening, make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.